Hey everyone, welcome back to the Light Leaks. I'm Mercedes. Today's interview is with some brilliant filmmakers who collaborated to make a new documentary that just premiered at Tribeca Film Festival. It's called Dear Miss, A Revolution in Print. Before we jump into the interview, let me tell you a bit about the film. This documentary dives into the history and impact of Miss Magazine, which has been a force in feminist media since the early 1970s. The documentary is in three parts, and each director had her own part to discuss Miss Magazine through past cover stories. Part one is by Salima Koroma. It's called A Magazine for All Women. In part one, Salima shares the magazine's origin story and examines the ways the magazine aimed to reach all women but didn't quite hit the mark because of their exclusion of Black women on the covers and throughout the articles. Part two is by Alice Gu, and it's titled Miss, A Portable Friend. Alice's part dives deep into how the magazine responded to sexism in the 70s and how their impact in reporting actually changed language. The magazine is responsible for coining terms like sexual harassment and battered wives. Can you believe that? I was shocked to learn that until Miss Magazine, we didn't even have the language to report on harassment, and their articles introduced these terms into the lexicon. The third part, directed by Cecilia Aldarondo, is called No Comment. Part three is all about how the magazine navigated the complexities of the feminist movement through the debates around sexual exploitation versus sexual expression. Overall, the documentary gives us viewers a look into the major ways the magazine made moves for feminist media and reported on many controversial topics for the sake of women across the country. But the documentary also brings up the ways the magazine should have done things differently and the women they ended up excluding along the way. Taking a critical eye like that reminds us that there's always room to grow and more representation to be had. It's really important to understand feminist media history, especially now in this time of censorship, corruption, and the severe decline of intellectualism. This film gives us a window into the past while still reminding us of the work we must continue doing. And collaborative filmmaking shows us how being in community only makes us stronger. Let's dive into our conversation with Salima Koroma, Alice Gu, and Cecilia Aldarondo. So, to start us off, what was it like to see this documentary premiere at Tribeca and witness the reception?
I will say it was bananas. I knew it was good. I knew it was going to be complex because we were three different projects with three different teams. So from a scale perspective, it was kind of a lot. But the passion and the intensity of everybody there was like a fever on the red carpet. We just felt it was very exciting. People just seemed to really crave the film. It felt very and yeah, a little bit nuts.
Yeah, and also like the amount of people who said that they, used to read the magazine when they
Mm.
were, younger back in the day, meeting with those people for the first time, seeing all of, for me anyway, because I hadn't seen all of the Ms. Magazine, the founders, in the
Mhm.
same place. That was pretty fantastic. Yeah, the energy was just so palpable. And yeah, it was great, especially like seeing we made a film about feminism, about a feminist magazine, and I actually thought people weren't going to want to hear about feminism. I actually thought
Wow,
that it wasn't going to get the reception that it got, but people really loved it.
that's
Yeah,
amazing.
I'll jump in and say that it was electrifying and to be able to celebrate with these women together. Oh my gosh, it was just the culmination of you know, months of work and seeing it celebrated and seeing the editors and the founders celebrated was incredible. And afterwards, it was the people who came up and said that people in tears, people came up saying that it was so important and it really resonated with them. I would say I speak for me, but maybe for all of us as an artist, like it's so life affirming to hear
Mhm.
that your work resonates with people. So I just felt very proud.
And how did you each find yourself on this project?
That's a tough one. Tough one because I think McGee Media, who had worked on Makers, and Makers was a project where they spoke with a lot of women, and they reached out to all of us individually. And I think the challenge was figuring out how we were going to do this project, how we were
Mhm.
going to tell this story. Do we tell a chronological story of Ms. Magazine? Do we all, sort of work together, me, Cecilia, and Alice, and say this is step one, is step two? Do we all figure out the covers? And actually, what it was, I got to choose the covers I wanted to. Alice got to choose what she wanted to do. Cecilia got to choose the one she wanted to. And we got to make these three mini films that were separate but related to each other. It was really cool. Something that I've never done this kind of thing before. I don't know that I've watched this kind of thing before. So that's sort of how it all came together. And I'm glad it was us.
And Cecilia, we saw that you're a professor. Does your work in academia influence your filmmaking?
Oh yeah, constantly. I mean, I think of it as a total symbiosis. Like I get
Mhm.
ideas for my classes from the films that I make, and I get ideas for films by watching films and discussing them with my students and helping my students make films. Like it's like a great, a classroom is like a great exercise in empathy, and
Mhm.
it's like a big old brainstorm. So yeah, at its best, it can be a little crazy sometimes to juggle two careers. But at its best, they really inform each other.
I'm laughing
Yeah,
because Cecilia is a, gender studies,
right.
researcher, and it's an understatement to say that she sort of pulls from her work. Absolutely. I think, I've learned a lot from Cecilia. I've learned a lot from Alice, just hearing how they think about things, how they envision things. It's been really great.
That's good to hear. And Salima, some of your past work has focused on forgotten or neglected histories, like your documentary about the destruction of Black Wall Street. How did you bring your experiences to your role as director on this project?
Thank you. Yes, I made a film about Black Wall Street and the destruction of Black Wall Street, which was, we talk about history, and a lot of history is very whitewashed.
Mm,
And going into Dear Ms., it was really nice being able to talk about feminism from a Black perspective.
yeah.
Like I took a lot of political thought classes, and there was one class I took called Black Feminist Thought, which totally changed my life. I was like,
Mhm.
what is this thing where I feel like I'm Black and I'm also a woman? What's that thing called? Oh, it's called intersectionality,
Right.
right? And beyond that, there's class and there's education,
Mhm.
and so to be able to not just tell that story in Dear Ms., but also talk to women who were here before me who also felt that same way and could talk
Yeah.
about it in a very like material way, was freaking amazing.
And Alice, how does your expertise in cinematography influence your role as a director?
Oh gosh, I think this was actually a different one. Usually my background as a DP, I'm a very visual director. I
Hmm.
like to use a lot of the visual language and storytelling. Um, it was a little different in this one because it was so much archival, which was a joy to work with. Um, I mean, I guess it's a little bit hard to articulate because everything is still from this like very visual language POV. So maybe that goes into subconsciously on a level like the type of archive that I choose and how we put them together. But as far as cinematography itself in this particular piece, there wasn't as much opportunity for me, since we didn't follow the women around or anything. But
Yeah.
I would say probably, yeah, it would still inform itself in the visual language, the graphics, the graphic
Mhm.
treatments, the title, and our archive.
And to give our listeners a little background, Miss Magazine is a feminist magazine still active today. It was co-founded in 1971 by the journalist and activist Gloria Steinem. It was the first national American feminist publication. Had you all read or heard of Miss Magazine before making the film?
I mean, I have a gender studies master's degree, and so
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you take a class in feminism, it's like feminism 101. But
Right.
I think one of the things I'm really proud of with this film is that we are hopefully returning Ms. to the zeitgeist, because at the time
Mhm.
it very much was in the zeitgeist and everybody knew what Ms. was back in the 70s. I think so. I mean,
Mhm.
it managed to break into the mainstream in a way that a lot of feminist publications just didn't have the capacity to do. So, yeah, I think that's one of the things that is awesome about this project, is that we're reintroducing this really important historical, not just one document, but many documents.
Yeah.
Um, and you can really geek out if you want to. You can find back issues on eBay. And I totally recommend it. It's a great magazine.
I hadn't heard of it actually. I was interested in telling a story of this sort of like glossy, startup with a bunch of women who are sort of figuring it out. But
Hmm.
when I was approached to do this doc, I called my mom and I was like, I might do this documentary about a magazine called Ms. Magazine. And my mom lives in Sierra Leone. She's been there for the last like 25 years. And she goes, "Oh, Miss Magazine." She used to live in Chicago. And when she was growing up, when she was in Chicago, um, Ms. Magazine was everywhere, is how she explained it to me. So for me, to hear that from my mom, who's been gone from the US for so long, it really hit home that, oh, my mom knows Ms. Magazine. That was great.
Yeah.
And I'll say I was familiar with it peripherally. It wasn't in my household growing up, but I certainly was familiar with the magazine.
And what role do you feel this documentary may have in preserving the legacy and impact of feminist media?
I just want to say, I don't even think it's just about preserving. I think we
Yeah.
need to reactivating feminist media. I'm glad that we're on your podcast. Great
Hmm.
that you're highlighting the work of female non-binary directors.
Thank
So
you.
I think, yes, there's a way that this is a film about history, but like I think that we can all feel the rollbacks and the attacks
Hmm.
on women's rights that we're seeing on every front right now.
Definitely.
And so, yeah, so I think it's my hope is that especially younger generations watch this film and it
Hmm.
helps inspire them. Not
Yeah.
just it's really a lot of food for thought, but like I think in particular in the social media age, like and in the the democratization of media that we're seeing with like podcasters like you doing it, like I think that there's a lot of opportunity to really continue to reactivate not just the conversation, but like community building around
Hmm.
these issues.
Yeah, I really hope that the younger generation of women will watch this film and will resonate with it and maybe be surprised again that, only 50 years ago, life was very, very, very different for women in this country. And to know that where we came from and to know that history, to know where you don't want to go back to,
Hmm.
and in that reactivation and in this space, yeah, I really hope that this film will get out there and resonate. I'm so, so happy to be on your podcast. I hope that that your listeners will watch and maybe learn a little something new and be inspired.
Thank you. Thank you. I think they will. Definitely.
I wanted to say one last thing, which
Yeah.
is, I think we talk about how feminist, the word is, becoming sort of a taboo. And, I just think about the rolling back of Roe v. Wade. I
Hmm.
think about a clip I saw recently where a young conservative woman asked a male panelist, what should I study when I go to college? And he said, you need to get I've never heard this term before, your MRS degree, right? Cecilia, did you see that?
Oh no, but I've heard of that. I've heard
Oh
I've
of
my
that
never
from
heard of
God.
this.
John.
MRS degree, which is finding a husband. And,
Mm.
and everyone's clapping and cheering, and you have the women sort of clapping and cheering. And that shit is scary to me.
Yeah.
That shit is scary. And
And
I
this is present day.
this was Charlie Kirk, right? This was
Hmm.
like a few days ago. And so we have these, more than preserving. I think we're going to bump up against a time in which we're not going to have the things that we sort of take for granted are no longer going to be there, or they're going to be in danger. And so I think now we sort of poo-poo the idea of feminism and feminists, but I think young folks can benefit from watching what it used to be like.
Listen, I mean,
Definitely.
it's not it's not an accident that the trad wife is like a phenomenon,
It's
right?
true. Hmm.
I think about the rise of Andrew Tate and the
Yep.
manosphere. Like women are more vulnerable than ever. I just saw a video of an immigrant woman who had a green card and whose child was taken away from her. She was
Mm.
breastfeeding and her baby was taken away from her and she was taken into ICE custody. Like what is this? What is happening to women? And it's scary, but it's also like, and I just want to reiterate that like Ms. was also a community building magazine that made women feel less alone. And so I think
Mhm.
that it's also important in these very scary times to realize that like we're nothing without our community and our solidarity. And so I think that's also, again, it's also an inspiring story.
Mm.
Yes, definitely. Community is everything, especially now, because none of these occurrences are in a vacuum. They all are connected. And the magazine has had a major impact on culture since its publication and was involved in crafting language for women to discuss issues like sexual harassment. Did you learn anything new or surprising about Miss Magazine or the time period during this process?
I mean, I think we all learned new and exciting things. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that struck me the most, and which I explore in part three, No Comment, which is all about
Mm.
pornography and the division within the movement around porn, is the way the bravery of Ms. in fostering debate and disagreement.
Mm.
One of the things that this film does is it's not just a, yes, we're very proud of Ms. and we inherited this amazing legacy, but we also try and look at the things that the magazine might not have gotten right.
Yeah.
And I think is something I want to credit Ms. for. And even now, the women of Ms. participating in the film being courageous enough and open enough to really take stock of the things that they might not have gotten right the first time, that kind of hindsight. So anyway, but I think that the magazine was this, it's just, I really do think people should go on eBay and get an old issue because you just flip
Yeah.
that thing and it's so complex.
Get an old issue and look at the advertising. Look
Mm.
Oh.
at how the advertising was in the 70s. And even in
Mhm.
this, it's it's absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
I love Alice's part two talks about there are a few things it talks about men um uh um was it sexual harassment and what's the other term, Alice?
Battered wives.
Battered
Mm.
wives, right? Like sexual harassment wasn't even, I can't imagine this, but it wasn't even a sort of in the
Yeah.
lexicon, right? Uh, this is only like 50 some odd years ago. And right?
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. And Gloria says, she's like, now we have these words, sexual harassment, battered wives. She said 10 years ago, this was just called life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's unfathomable
Hmm.
to it's unfathomable to me. One thing that did really surprise me, and it's like the ending text in part two was that legislation for violence, domestic violence and violence against women, it's only passed in 1994. Like it took 20 years since they first brought it up, since it was in the conversation. It took 20 years for that legislation to pass. 1994 is so recent. Like it
Yeah.
was completely still legal to beat your wife
Mm.
not that
Oh
long
my
ago.
goodness.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So looking at this film, and for young women, older women, whoever, is watching this, I mean, just seeing these statistics, seeing these things, seeing the timeline, it's wild. And you see how far we've come. Like I get very emotional when I see how far we've come. And then you also do realize how far we have to
Yeah.
go.
And
Right.
lastly, for my part, I think we have my part focuses on sort of a magazine for all women, and who it leaves out. One of those groups is, or that felt that way, was Black women.
Hmm.
And there's this contrast between Essence of the time and Essence magazine and Ms.
Right.
Magazine. And one thing that kind of surprised me, I don't want to say surprised, but I really felt. I spoke with one writer. Her name is Michelle Wallace, who said she was on the cover of Ms. Magazine, and she was asked to take out her braids. She was asked to sort of look more quote unquote presentable or palatable for a broader audience. And that's something that she didn't have to do when she was when she was in Essence Magazine. And I think parts of parts of that still exist, but I am happy that I am encouraged to wear my braids. I'm encouraged to be how I want to be. Um, but there's still some work to be done.
And along with this documentary is a nuanced and really honest exploration into the history of the magazine and just the cultural movements of the time in the nation. How did you all navigate both honoring and critiquing the publication while sharing its legacy?
You know, one of the things I'm thinking as we're all talking is about the intergenerational nature of this project, right? We are all inheritors of the Ms. generation. Like this
Hmm.
is more or less our mother's generation. And I'm now old enough to have like I was just visiting with my niece and nephew who are teenagers, and they're starting to get really fired up about certain political issues. And we were having some pretty intense conversations about sometimes the kind of shutdown that happens with younger people not being interested or dismissing the perspectives of their elders. And
Mm.
I think that that is a really grave mistake. I think that one of the opportunities of this film is to kind of like at least for me, it was, and I think it was true. You've all described, I mean, Selima and Alice have both described moments of like getting to spend time and listen to the experiences of these women
Hmm.
is really informative. And I think that like while like our elders should be centering the experiences of the youth who are going to inherit this earth, right? Like I do think that there's also a mistake of older people dismissing young people.
Right.
um, I just think that there's a really interesting opportunity here in engaging across generational divides because we all take for granted the things that the women of Ms. fought for.
Hmm.
And I think that we do that at our peril.
And before we go, lastly, what advice do you have for women or non-binary documentary filmmakers looking to tell stories that honor complex truths?
My first thing is to say, you're only as strong as your team and your people.
Hmm.
Finding your collaborators that you believe in, it's really hard to do the work we do, and it takes a lot of persistence and tenacity, and it can be really isolating. So, I would say, don't try and climb over your peers. Join forces with your peers.
That's
Yeah,
great.
and
That was
I
so
would
much fun.
say to really do the work and knowing yourself and following your instinct. It's very hard work. As Cecilia had said, you have to love it. You have to like
Hmm.
live, breathe, eat, sleep, sweat. Like it's going to be your life for a while. So you better love it. Because if you don't love it, it's going to be a very, very hard time. But if you do love it, you're thinking about it all the time and you are working with your collaborators, you are working with your peers. Um, and when you have that instinct, when you're kind of like following the wind, just to go at it with full tenacity, with full force.
And I
Yes.
would say something very similar, which is love not just what you're doing, not just the act of filmmaking, but the stories that you're telling, right? So I care. My first film was about Asian American rappers. Oh man, I love
Yeah.
talking about music and race. Like that is something I could do all day. And then I fell in love with, the story of Tulsa, and like I really cared about that. And then when it came time to do this, Dear Ms., I care about Black feminists. That's what I
Hmm.
care about. And so I could stay in that world for a long time. So I think care about what you do and care about the stories that you're telling.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us here. And thank you so much for this film. I loved watching it. I know I'm going to return back to it. I learned so much, and I'm just so appreciative that we have you all behind the camera. Thank you so much again to Salima Koroma, Alice Gu, and Cecilia Aldarondo. I'm Mercedes, and you can follow the Light Leaks for more interviews, filmmaker spotlights, and community-led content that amplifies women and non-binary voices in film. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.